Hello again from State College, Pennsylvania. My name is Dave Ulmer, and I'm the Chief Product Officer for EnergyCAP. I have the privilege of leading our technology teams and ensuring that we provide to you reliable, fast, helpful software that is meeting your needs. And I am really excited to be able to share with you some of the features that we have built into EnergyCAP about our chargebacks. And in particular, we entitled this webinar, Reinventing Campus Distributions and Tenant Rebilling, because we really believe that some of the latest features that we have built into EnergyCAP can really revolutionize the way you handle your campus distributions, the way you rebill some of your tenants and other customers. As we get started today, I thought it would be a good idea for us to just get on the same page about what do we mean when we talk about chargebacks. We hear a lot of different terms from customers about the way that they internally track their energy and cost throughout their system. So generically, we define chargebacks as the process by which energy and cost provided to one organization is then allocated across multiple other departments or facilities. So that could be within a campus, it could be even within multiple campuses, maybe it's just a financial transaction. And in your organization, you may call this something very different. We've heard terms like cost allocations, campus distributions, bill splits, rebillings, charge outs, sub-meter bills, tenant bills. All of these fall into the category of what we call EnergyCAP chargebacks. A chargeback does not mean that you have to actually be collecting dollars. And when we talk about chargeback bills in EnergyCAP, it doesn't mean that you have to deliver a bill to anyone. We simply talk about bills because bills are at the center of how EnergyCAP works. So when we're representing a cost allocation, in EnergyCAP terms, we're creating an internal bill, a bill that's not been produced by a vendor and handed to you. Instead, it's a bill that's getting created within the system for the purpose of accounting or energy management. Those bills can be cost only, they can be use only, or they can contain both cost and use. We have reasons why you might want to do all of the above. Please don't get hung up on the fact that we're talking about a chargeback bill. Again, no one has to pay the bill. In some cases, it might be paid by a different organization, and in other cases, you may decide that that's just the way that you split up your utilities for better accounting purposes or energy management tracking. All of these scenarios, though, are what we call EnergyCAP chargeback scenarios. So why would you use chargebacks? Well, we, again, run across a lot of different reasons. It could be because you have multiple departments where you need to split up your vendor bills so that all of the departments that are receiving the benefits are paying their share of each of those vendor bills. It could be that you need to assign utility costs to specific projects, grants, or special activities. This is very common in, let's say, a university or a higher ed setting. You might be creating bills for tenants and delivering those. If you are in the housing market, perhaps you have common areas and spaces that you need to recoup your cost for, and you're actually creating bills for tenants. Or perhaps you're running energy plants and you're distributing utilities throughout a campus. You can use EnergyCAP chargebacks for those purposes as well. You can use chargebacks to true up financial transactions to make sure that all of the money that needs to be collected matches to the penny. Or perhaps you're more interested in maybe some facility tracking and using some of these internal bills to better report on data, for instance, for Energy Star or for greenhouse gas reporting. Regardless of the reason, whether you're giving these bills to others or only using them for accounting tracking purposes, EnergyCAP chargebacks cover all of these scenarios. And EnergyCAP really is a recognized leader in chargebacks. In fact, if we look at 2018 and look at how our customers and clients have used EnergyCAP's chargeback features, we found that they generated over 350,000 bills last year, worth over $1.2 million. This was all just using EnergyCAP's chargeback features. So as you can tell, this is a feature that is heavily used by our clients. It's one of the things that they find the most value that EnergyCAP provides their organizations. And I'm excited that we can talk about some of those details today. So our agenda for today is to dive into how EnergyCAP's chargeback features have reinvented campus distributions and tenant rebills. We're going to talk about how EnergyCAP chargebacks can simplify your monthly workflow, how you can use bill splits and calculations in a very flexible way, and how easy they are to configure. We're going to talk about chargeback workflows and how they ensure consistency with step-by-step instructions and built-in documentation tailored to your organization's needs. And finally, we'll talk about how EnergyCAP includes easy options for setting up your chargebacks and maintaining them over time. Let's dive into how EnergyCAP chargebacks simplify your monthly workflow. At EnergyCAP, as we've been working on the latest version of our software, EnergyCAP version 7, we've continued to keep the idea of making software that's easier, smarter, and friendlier at the forefront. And EnergyCAP chargebacks fall right into that same paradigm. While we're trying to make them easier to use, at the same time, we're adding lots of smarts and helping add new functionality that has been requested in some cases for many years by our clients. And we find that all of these different features provide value to different people in different ways, making it friendlier and easier to use along the way. Here's a quote from one of our current users of EnergyCAP's latest chargeback features. They said, "EnergyCAP did what I thought was impossible, and that is eliminate my thousands of lines on spreadsheets and freed up chunks of my time while simultaneously giving us a better comprehension of energy." And that goes right to the core of EnergyCAP chargebacks. We're looking to build a solution that's easy to use and saves you time so that you can spend that time looking for and resolving issues rather than trying to maintain a process. EnergyCAP's chargebacks are built on 3 simple but very powerful features, and we're going to dive into all 3 of these today. We have bill splits. At their core, bill splits allow you to take an existing bill and divide it up to many other downstream users. We have bill calculations that allow you to create a bill from scratch using calculations that you define. And then we have chargeback workflows that bring the whole thing together into a really easy to use package. Let's dive into a little more detail on each of these 3. When we talk about bill splits, specifically, we're talking about dividing any existing bill into 1 or more smaller bills. And you can do that using percentages that you know. You can do it using floor area calculations or using dynamic percentages. And we'll dive into each of those examples in further detail in just a moment. We also have a feature of our chargeback process called bill calculations. And with bill calculations, you're creating a brand new bill. You're not using a bill that was already given to you by a vendor. Instead, you're using EnergyCAP to create a bill from scratch using your own custom calculations. Those could be based on sub-meter readings, using your own defined rates. You might decide to use fixed costs or combine bills together to create a new type of bill. There are lots of different ways that you can configure bill calculations. It's one of the most flexible parts of EnergyCAP's chargeback features. And finally, chargeback workflows. These organize groups of bill splits and calculations together into repeatable steps, helping you not only document your system, but get new people on board and make sure that you're following the same process month after month as you process your rebills and other allocations. If you've been a user of EnergyCAP's chargeback features before, you might be interested to know just some of the things that we've done to enhance our chargeback features in the latest version of our software. That's version 7. Specifically, you can now use any meter or account in your system for chargebacks. There's no reason to have to set it up in a special way to begin with. Any meter or account in the system is eligible to be used for chargebacks. You can also now use multiple meters on an account in chargebacks, or perhaps you prefer to have a meter with multiple accounts on it. Both of these 2 options are really flexible, and they allow you to track your data on an accounting perspective or facility perspective in a flexible way that wasn't available in the past. If you're using our bill split feature, you can now split bills before they're approved. That's something that had been requested by a number of our users. We've also allowed for more flexible data types on sub-meter channels, lots of different types of data that you can bring into the system and generate bills from using our bill calculations. We've also integrated an automatic roll-up process for interval data. So now if you're tracking bills or you're tracking interval data on, let's say, a monthly or on an hourly basis, Every month, you can generate a bill from the hourly data with nothing in between. The chargeback process will take care of the whole thing for you. And there's also no need to configure distribution parents for submeters and bill calculations. So if you've been a user of EnergyCAP chargeback features in the past, you might be interested in how some of these new features will make things even more flexible for your teams. It's important to note that version 7 chargeback settings are independent from version 3. So there are some things that are different. And part of the reason we did this is because we knew we wanted to add a lot of new features that we just couldn't integrate into the way things were in the past. So as you're listening to these features, just be aware that the version 7 chargeback settings are separate and different from what you've seen in version 3. And we'll talk more at the end of the presentation about the integration of the two systems. So now that we've talked about how EnergyCAP chargebacks simplify your monthly workflow, let's dig into some details about how bill splits and calculations provide both flexibility and also they're easy to configure along the way. We're going to start with bill splits. Bill splits are configured on accounts, and they're configured, again, to divide bills to one or more destination meters. There are 3 different ways that you can configure your bill splits. You can use fixed percentages. If you know that a particular bill should be split, let's say 25% to one department and 75% to another department, then you can provide those fixed values to EnergyCAP, and we'll use that in our processing. But we've added a new feature to allow dynamic splitting based on floor area. So if you have a bill that may represent multiple buildings, perhaps you have a campus environment with several buildings that receive one common bill. Instead of having to manually enter those percentages, you can now ask EnergyCAP to do it for you. Simply select meters that are on those downstream buildings, and EnergyCAP will automatically adjust the percentages as necessary to make sure that 100% of your original vendor bill is distributed to all the downstream locations. We've also added a third option, an advanced bill split, that creates automatic percentages based on the relative cost or use of other bills that are in your system. This is really flexible in certain scenarios. For instance, perhaps you have a supplier bill that you receive monthly, but that supplier bill actually represents 3 or 4 or more meters that you receive distribution bills for as well. You can have that supplier bill automatically distributed to all of your downstream distribution meters automatically, so that 100% of that original supply bill is represented based on how much each downstream meter has used in a given period. This is really flexible and provides for great opportunities to make sure that you're fully covering your cost and you don't have to spend a lot of time managing your system. As we look at some of the enhancements that are part of the latest version of EnergyCAP, I've highlighted here the features that are completely brand new. So if you're used to using our chargeback features in the past, you'll find that both the dynamic and the advanced options are completely brand new, something that's unique to EnergyCAP version 7. Have to set up the account in a special way in advance. You can simply select an account and you'll be guided through the process of setting up a bill split. We walk you through with step-by-step instructions, configuring the settings, making sure that you have all the required information set up to make sure that your bill splits are ready to go. Here's an example of setting up bill splits based on static percentages. Again, perhaps you have a scenario where you know that you need to divide a bill to 2 different funding sources, 75-25% split. Simply select those funding sources and give us the percentages, and you can see easily what share of the original bill will be split and distributed to downstream locations. One of our new options is to dynamically split bills based on floor area. So here's an example where, let's say a vendor bill was provided that represents a bill for 4 buildings that are behind that original vendor bill. In this case, the data center, HR office, sales office, and warehouse will all receive their fair share of that original bill. Not only can we do percentages, but you can also add weighting factors. And you see that here on the right-hand side. As you can expect, a data center will likely use more cooling or heating per square foot than a typical office building. So we can add an extra weighting to the floor area of that facility, and that will be automatically taken into account during the calculations. In the same way, we've actually reduced the share that the warehouse should receive by giving it a weighting factor of only 0.25. So each of the floor areas will be multiplied by their multipliers or weighting factors, and then added together to figure out what the total adjusted square footage is, and then the percentages will be automatically updated with every bill that's split in the system to ensure that 100% of the source bill is distributed downstream. The third option for bill splits is our advanced option. And with this option, you define a set of meters, defined as a meter group, that will receive some share of the original bill. And you can decide whether to split up the original bill's use or cost or both. And you can decide how the recipients should be weighted. Are you going to weight each of the downstream meters based on their existing cost or their use? Again, this is incredibly powerful for truing up your system, and also in those scenarios where you might have a supply bill that needs to be split up to downstream bills that already have distribution bills on them. So again, bill splits, static, dynamic, and advanced bill split calculations, all available in EnergyCAP's chargebacks. Next, I'd like to move on to our bill calculations. Bill calculations are configured on meters, and specifically they're meters that are configured to generate brand new bills based on use, cost, and demand calculations that you configure within EnergyCAP. Bill calculations are really powerful because you can independently configure the way use should be calculated, separate from how cost should be calculated. Both parts of the bill can be calculated through this process, but they don't have to rely on one another. And that gives you a lot of flexibility as either an accountant or as a facility manager when you're creating your calculations. When we talk about ways to calculate use, EnergyCAP chargebacks include 4 methods for calculating use. You can gather data from sub-meter readings. You can define a fixed amount. Perhaps you have a system that has lighting in it, and instead of having a meter to represent lighting, you have a calculated value that you'd like to use for usage month after month. Well, you can provide that as a fixed amount, and EnergyCAP will automatically apply that every month. You can also copy the use from another meter, a really powerful feature that I'll talk about in just a moment. And finally, there are summary calculations, the ability to add or subtract other meters or meter groups together to create a brand new value. Really helpful with campus distributions, where perhaps you need to subtract a group of meters from your energy plant to determine what is the unfunded portion of your system, or perhaps the losses on your system. All of the items highlighted in blue here are new features that are only available in EnergyCAP version 7. And again, we've added these features based on feedback over the years we've received from our customers. As I mentioned before, calculating cost in a bill calculation is a separate calculation from use. If you want, you can have your use part of your cost calculation. In particular, we give you 3 ways to do that. You can take the use that was calculated and apply some rate that you've defined. You can supply a very specific unit cost, or you can have us grab the unit cost off of another meter for the same billing period. But we've also given you new options that are independent of using the use. You can simply supply a fixed amount. This is incredibly helpful when perhaps you have a tenant and you have a pre-negotiated monthly amount that they need to pay for utilities. Your use can be calculated using one method, but you can supply a fixed amount that should be used for cost month after month. You can also copy cost from another meter. You can also do a similar summary calculation, just like you can on the use side. It's also available on the cost side, where you can add or subtract multiple meters or meter groups together to create a new value in the system. As with bill splits, all of these blue items are brand new features that we've added as part of our chargeback features in EnergyCAP version 7. Let's see what this looks like in the application. When you're configuring a bill calculation from a meter, we have a similar wizard that will walk you through the process of creating your first bill calculation. We highlight all the different options that are available for calculating use, cost, demand, and other charges in your system, and identify if there's something that's required that you haven't configured yet. When you're configuring how use should be calculated within your system, these are the options that I mentioned before. You can use readings from a submeter. And as in this example, you can see that now you can use not just monthly channels, but also other channels, 15-minute, hourly, daily channels that will automatically roll up into a monthly total. You can fix an amount, and we will use that amount over and over again. That's the lighting example I mentioned before. Copying use from another meter is a really flexible option because not only can you provide a percentage that you should copy from another meter, this feature in particular also will convert units across commodities. We have a number of users who've looked for a feature like this, where they could generate the use for a sewer meter based on a corresponding water meter that they already have in the system. That's the example that I have demonstrated on the screen here, where this water meter, Capital Complex Water 01, 95% of the use for that meter in this month will be added to a sewer meter where we're creating a brand new bill. That way you can flexibly create new bills in your system that will dynamically month based on some percentage of another meter in your system. And finally, you can use our new advanced calculations to add or subtract meters or meter groups together. So in this case, I have a central campus feed that I'm going to subtract several meters from to come up with the leftover or the amount that I'm going to redistribute in some other way. Let's transition over to the cost calculations. You can use a rate that you've defined, similar to what you've seen in other versions of EnergyCAP. You can also use a fixed unit cost where you supply it once, and we'll continue to use that fixed unit cost through the calculations until you change it. And then finally, you can also use a unit cost from another meter. Select another meter in the system. Perhaps it's a vendor meter that's related to a submeter, or some other meter in the system that you would like to use the current unit cost from, and we'll apply that to your use on your bill calculation. All three of these options use the use that you just calculated to calculate cost. These three options do not use use. They simply calculate based on what you've provided. So you can set a fixed amount, like the example I provided where you have a contract and you're going to create a tenant bill for a fixed amount month after month. You can copy costs from another meter in the system, and you can also do calculations. In this case, what I've done is actually add together all of the input costs for running a steam plant to generate a new bill that represents the entire sum of all costs of running this steam plant. Additional features for calculating demand and other charges like meter charges or account level charges are also available as part of the bill calculations in EnergyCAP version 7. So as we mentioned, there are 4 options available for calculating use with bill calculations, 6 methods for calculating cost as well. All of these options provide you with lots of different opportunities to model your system exactly the way you want. So we've talked about how chargebacks simplify your monthly workflow and how they're flexible and easy to configure. Now we're going to talk about a new feature called chargeback workflows and talk about how they ensure consistency with step-by-step instructions and built-in documentation that's tailored to your organization. Chargeback workflows are bill calculations and bill splits that are organized into step-by-step actions that your team can process month after month. If we go back to the three main features of EnergyCAP chargebacks, chargeback workflows is at the macro level. It allows you to group bill splits and bill calculations together and process them in an orderly fashion. They're optional. You don't have to use them to do bill splits or bill calculations, but they really do define a very systematic way to keep your calculations orderly every month. Here are some of the features of EnergyCAP chargeback workflows. As we mentioned, they provide order, structure, and an opportunity to document right within EnergyCAP what your chargeback process is. They walk a user through step by step how to process and verify chargeback bills. They can be used to group similar chargebacks together for easy processing, like all your vendor bill splits, all done at the same time, or all your sub-meter calculations or energy plant distributions. You can group all those actions into one particular step for your users. They're also very flexible. You can configure as many workflows and steps per workflow as you need. These workflows also increase visibility across your team. No longer is it just one person on your team who knows how to process the sub-meters and then make the adjustments that are required to get all of your accounting done on a monthly basis. This is a systematic way to document and perform these actions so that more people on your team can understand them and perform them as well. And each step of an EnergyCAP chargeback workflow is reversible. It can be completely undone and rerun if you find a problem. What does this look like in the real world? So as an example, I have a distribution here where two vendor bills are being supplied for a particular campus. We want to group those together into one master bill so that we have a unit cost that represents the entire campus. Then we would like to calculate sub-meter bills based on that new unit cost, and then calculate the difference between the vendor bills and the sub-meter bills to see if there's any loss or remainder on our system that we need to account for. And if we want, we can even allocate that loss and remainder, and finally split the sub-meter bills into specific facilities. In EnergyCAP now, I can model all 5 of these items as steps of a single workflow. And this is what it would look like. I define the name of my workflow, and then each step I provide a name that helps my organization understand what is done as that step of the workflow. I also provide a description so that people who might be new to the process or those who might be running the process can easily reflect on what needs to be done or what the purpose of a particular step is. Once I've defined this workflow, then I can group my chargebacks together into each of these steps. And from this new view that's available in EnergyCAP version 7, you can follow each step every month and analyze the results as you run the steps. So here you can see each step, summarize vendor bills, calculate sub-meter bills, compare vendor totals to sub-meters. As I perform each of those steps, this screen automatically updates to show the result of that step and to provide comparison information with other information that's available in the system. These new views allow you to quickly and easily identify billing issues, outliers, and missing data with each workflow step, even before you move on to the next one, so that you don't get caught having to undo a lot of steps along the way. So as you process, these values automatically update to help you perform a sanity check, make sure you don't have missing data in the system before you move on. And as I mentioned, every step along the way is reversible. You can reverse a step and rerun it as many times as you'd like with no ill effects within the application. Just to show the power of this new chargeback workflow feature, I wanted to show you some live data. This is given to us by permission by one of our clients who is currently using the chargeback features of EnergyCAP version 7 to run all of their chargeback workflows. In fact, this is a university that is processing all their chargebacks through EnergyCAP version 7. And this is an example of 1 month where they have used the chargeback workflow to generate their sub-meter bill for their cogen plant. They've summarized information together, and then they've created sub-meter bills. And as you can see here, they can quickly and easily identify any issues in their data before they move on. And here's a quote from this particular client of ours. They said, "Version 7 is fabulous. Chargebacks equal a stellar thought process and design. I completed my monthly workflow today and literally have 10 to 15 ideas on what to do in my buildings just by a simple review on the same screen." This client is really excited about how much time and energy our new chargeback workflow and chargeback processes are saving them. And I'm excited to see even more of our clients who are using this, the success stories that they have in the future. So we talked through chargeback workflows. We've talked about configuring your chargebacks. Now I'd like to highlight a few features that we've added to EnergyCAP to make the setup and the maintenance of your chargebacks easy for your team to do. All of EnergyCAP's chargeback features are configurable with setup spreadsheets. Many of our existing users love our setup spreadsheets, the ability to bulk update, create, modify their system. And we've made sure, as we've been building these new features to chargebacks, that all of the features within chargebacks are available through setup spreadsheets. So whether you're configuring bill splits or bill calculations and even workflows, you can set up information using setup spreadsheets. With the spreadsheets, offline, this gives you an ability to review, update your settings, verify it with others on your team, and then upload those changes to EnergyCAP, and those will be reflected immediately. It's also really easy to replicate a configuration across multiple accounts or meters. For instance, if you have a lot of sub-meters that all have a very similar structure, you might decide to set up the first one within the EnergyCAP application. Then you can download that setup spreadsheet and apply that same configuration to 50, 75, maybe even 100 or more meters all at the same time, very easily by copying and pasting information. Here's an example of our bill split chargeback setting spreadsheet. Again, this allows you to have access to all of the features that are available if you were to set up the same information within the application. Here's a view of our chargeback settings for bill calculations, and in the same way, all of those same features are reflected here as well. Again, I'm going to mention, for those on the phone who have already used some of EnergyCAP's chargeback features in perhaps version 3, that version 7 chargeback settings are independent and separate from anything that you have set up in version 3. And we've provided some tools to help you upgrade into version 7. Chargebacks help documentation and training videos are already available. So from within the EnergyCAP system, you have access to quickly view help guides and documentation about our chargebacks and workflows. Version 7 chargebacks can also be configured without any impact on previous versions of EnergyCAP. Because version 7 chargebacks are new and independent, you can set them up and configure them and take your time or compare between version 7 and previous versions, and know that anything you configure in version 7 will not negatively impact your settings in version 3. As I mentioned before, EnergyCAP version 7 chargebacks are easy to reverse. So you can even run them for testing purposes and reverse anything that you've done in EnergyCAP version 7 if you don't like the results. We've also built in conversion setup spreadsheets into version 7 to convert version 3 chargebacks. So if you have version 3 bill splits and version 3 sub-meters that are already configured, you can download setup spreadsheets within version 7 that will automatically be populated with all your version 3 settings. And part of the reason we did this as a spreadsheet is so that you could download it, review it offline. Perhaps you want to make changes to your system as you're creating it in version 7. Perhaps you want to integrate the new chargeback workflows. You can do all of that with the chargeback setup spreadsheets and then upload it at one time and have all of your version 7 setup done at once by using a simple setup spreadsheet. So again, the conversion setup spreadsheets are already built into version 7. If you go to our setup spreadsheet features, you'll see that there's an option there for convert, and you can convert your bill splits and your existing submeters to version 7 using these conversion setup spreadsheets. And again, the setup spreadsheets provide a lot of flexibility for offline setup and review. They're a great way to help document what you already have. Perhaps you want to use those to save them off and keep a snapshot of what you did before you made any changes in version 7. And don't forget, we're here to help. I've mentioned some of the resources that we've made available through our help guides and through our videos that are available through our user guide as well. If you have questions, please let us know. We want you to be successful, and we're so excited about the features that are available in EnergyCAP version 7. And we know and have already seen how our new chargeback features are saving our clients time and money. And we're here to make sure that you can make the most of each and every one of these features. So to summarize, we've talked about how EnergyCAP's chargeback features have reinvented campus distributions and tenant rebills. We've talked about how EnergyCAP chargebacks simplify your monthly workflow with a very consistent design that's easy to use. We've talked about how bill splits and calculations are flexible and easy to configure. Chargeback workflows ensure a consistency with step-by-step instructions and built-in documentation that's tailored to your own organization to help keep things flowing smoothly with all of the members on your team. And finally, we talked about how EnergyCAP has included easy options for chargeback setup and maintenance right in version 7 for you to use. And I want to emphasize, all of the features that I have shown you today and talked about are currently available to all of our clients. All of EnergyCAP's chargeback features are available for clients that we host, and also for any of our clients that are running their own EnergyCAP databases through their on-premises versions. With that, I'm going to address a couple of questions that were submitted in advance of the webinar. And if we have time, we'll also talk about some of the questions that you've been submitting online as well. The first question that was submitted is the chargeback setup process in version 3 still applicable to version 7? Well, I think you've seen along the way, we've added a lot of new features in version 7. So no, the setup process is not exactly the same between the two systems. In fact, we tried to make it easier to follow and understand in version 7. But if you've already configured your chargebacks in version 3, we've provided conversion setup spreadsheets built into version 7 to help upgrade you into version 7 as seamlessly as possible. And once you're in version 7, whether you configure your chargebacks through the user interface or use our setup spreadsheets, we have help all along the way to help you be successful in version 7. The next question that we had was, what needs to be done to convert our chargebacks to version 7? Well, as I just mentioned, the easiest way to do this is to simply run one of the conversion setup spreadsheets. You can download one of those conversion setup spreadsheets just to see how things will be configured in version 7. Even if you don't upload it to EnergyCAP version 7, you'll be able to have a snapshot of how EnergyCAP has interpreted your data. You can see how the settings are configured, and you can map some of the concepts that we talked about today to the way that EnergyCAP version 7 handles chargebacks. So again, I would direct you to our setup spreadsheets that we built in for converting version 3 chargebacks into version 7 chargebacks. Our next question is about submeters. What types of meters or sensors are required for EnergyCAP chargeback calculations? Well, EnergyCAP doesn't have a restriction on any type of meters or sensors. We've built our interval data processing to be very generic. So you can import data from a spreadsheet. If you have a system that can push data to EnergyCAP via APIs, you can do that as well. There are lots of different ways. You can even manually enter or use setup spreadsheets in some cases to enter interval data into EnergyCAP. as long as you can get the data out of your metering system or out of your meters, you can actually create a custom format within EnergyCAP version 7 to get your interval data in. I would direct you to some of the help documentation that exists related to our interval import formats, where you can customize and say which columns exist in the file that you're importing. And you can set that up once and then import the data over and over again. But from EnergyCAP's perspective, there's not a restriction on particular meters or sensors. In fact, you can be manually collecting meter readings. Maybe you have someone who's checking meters as part of a route meter program where you're going through routes month by month and collecting meter reads manually. We've built a route processor into EnergyCAP version 7 where you can simply fill out a spreadsheet and upload all that data to EnergyCAP as well. So lots of ways to get interval data into EnergyCAP, and all of that interval data then can be used in chargebacks. There's not a restriction on those specific meters or sensors that need to be used. Our last question that was submitted prior to the webinar is, what reports are available for chargebacks, and do they show use, unit cost, and total cost? This is a great question. One of the things that's really flexible about the way EnergyCAP handles chargebacks and cost allocation is we create chargeback bills. I talked about that at the beginning of the webinar, how chargeback bills are central to the way EnergyCAP processes, because EnergyCAP is at its core a bill processing system. The reason we create chargeback bills is because then all of EnergyCAP's reports can be used with chargeback bills in the same way that you can use a report to report information about a vendor bill that's provided to you. So all of the reports that provide billing data can be used to also report chargeback data as well. In fact, we have one split, or a filter is bill is from vendor. That's the name of the filter. If you look for the filter called bill is from vendor, you'll be able to identify whether you want to find bills that are only from vendors or bills that were created internal to the application. In this case, chargeback bills that are generated. So you can either report all of it together, you can report only vendor provided data, or you can report on only chargeback related data. But the key message here is that you can use all of EnergyCAP's bill lists, reports, benchmarks. All of our features work in the same way with chargeback bills as they do for vendor provided bills as well. That was the end of the pre-prepared questions, but I believe we have some questions that have been submitted online as well. So I'm going to handle those. The first question is, can you have multiple monthly chargeback workflows, each separately processed and monitored? And the answer to that is yes. EnergyCAP's chargeback workflows are not limited by the number of workflows that you have or by the number of steps that you want to add to any particular workflow. We have seen already with some of our customers, they are using, in some cases, a dozen different workflows based on their environment and the way they want to divide up their chargeback process. So you can define as many workflows as you want, and again, each workflow can have as many steps as you'd like along the way. The next question is the setup conversion spreadsheets for version 3. Is there one for enterprise client base or our installed client? No, we do not have an automatic conversion from the install client to version 7. There have been a lot of changes from the chargeback features that were available in our install client, for those who are familiar with our calculated accounts and some of our bill splits. However, if you are in the situation that you are looking to convert from the install client to version 7, please reach out to us. We have some tools that we've used and developed as to help clients upgrade from the install client to version 3. And once that information is converted into version 3, then you can use the conversion setup spreadsheets in version 7 to get your data across. So again, please don't struggle with this on your own. We've been through this process. We have some tools that we've used to help some of our clients already automatically migrate their calculated accounts and their bill splits from our install client to version 3. And once it's in version 3, then you can use the conversion setup spreadsheets to convert into version 7 chargebacks. We have one final question. If converting workflows from version 3, while converting workflows from version 3, does one obtain the current processes from version 3 or from the version 7 setup spreadsheets? So I think what the essence of this question is if you have already documented your workflow information in version 3, what I mean by that is perhaps you've already configured some of your filters to run the chargeback processor in version 3 in a certain way. You would want to document that information or use the documents you've already prepared for using version 3 to help you build your workflows in version 7. Version 3 really didn't have the concept of workflows. There was nothing built in to that version of our software that allowed you to systematically maintain workflows and process them. It really relied on a lot of heuristics and, in some cases, people looking at documented workflows outside of the system to know how they should process, in what order they should process things as well. In version 7, that can be all documented within the application. So however you're processing in version 3, you want to document that or use the documents you already have to create your workflows in version 7. And once those workflows are created in version 7, then it's just a matter of assigning your bill calculations and bill splits to each step of the workflow in order to process them all together in a way that makes sense for your organization. But again, version 3 doesn't have a built-in workflow manager. Version 7 does. So however you are managing your workflows manually in version 3, you want to use that same process flow, documentation, etc., to help you set up your workflows in version 7. Again, I would just like to thank you for your time today. I hope this has been helpful in helping you and your teams understand some of the capabilities and options that are available with EnergyCAP's chargebacks. Whether you're creating tenant bills or doing accounting allocations to different funds, or maybe splitting things up for facility analysis or using submeters, whether you're tracking use or cost through these allocations or not, EnergyCAP's chargeback processes and features accommodate all of those different scenarios. And in version 7, we've made them even easier to use. They're friendlier, they're faster. We've been able to really put your needs first along the way and both provide a rich set of features while also providing ways to easily get you over from anything you're using now into version 7. If you have questions, please reach out to us. We're here to help. And as I mentioned before, we also have built-in help documentation into version 7, as well as a series of videos. Perhaps this was enough to whet your appetite, but you'd like to dive in a little bit deeper. I highly recommend that you look for our videos that are available on our help site for the detailed EnergyCAP version 7 chargeback features training, where we go step by step through all of the scenarios that I mentioned today, and we do live demonstrations of the application to show you how it works and go into each setting in detail so that you can feel confident about setting up your chargebacks in EnergyCAP version 7. We believe EnergyCAP has truly revolutionized the way that tenant rebilling and campus distributions are done and will be managed going forward, and we hope you agree as well. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day.